If you've been anywhere on the internet recently, you probably noticed this interesting patterns of successful startups coming out of nowhere thanks to social media. A lot of these successful startups not only grew on social media, but social media has actually been their main growth channel. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you the strategies that I've been seeing these successful SaaS companies doing and how to figure out which ones you can actually implement for yourself. These strategies can be divided into two types. Earned media, which is basically where you earn your reach. So let's say you post a TikTok and it goes viral, it gets you users. That's an example of earned media. And then we have paid media, which is you're paying for the reach someone else has. So that'd be paying for ads or paying an influencer to post about your product. Now, the biggest difference, as you can probably tell, between earned and paid media is the price. With earned media, you're often paying a lot less. You're basically paying your content creator, but the reach is unguaranteed. But with the paid media, you're oftentimes paying a lot more, but your reach is typically more guaranteed. Now, at some point in the marketing for your SaaS, you are gonna have to do a mix between the two. But the reason why I laid this out is it basically sets the foundation for the strategies I'm about to show you in this video. And the first strategy we're going to talk about is the organic strategies, and that is YouTube. Now, you probably never heard of this strategy before to actually post on YouTube, but I do believe that this is a strategy that a lot of people are sleeping on. So a few months back, I was talking to some marketing agency owner, and I basically told him about my YouTube channel and how I had a background growing, revenue for my YouTube channel. And I basically asked him like, hey, is this something companies are looking into? He's like, no, short form is king, which it still kind of is. But I basically asked him like, hey, do companies still look for this stuff? Do they still look for YouTube content creators? And his answer was no. But despite hearing that no, I still had like a strong belief that YouTube actually might be a really good growth channel. And recent studies have found out that actually that might be the case for some businesses. So what is my point? Well, there's this company called Instantly AI that actually popped off within the past 2 years, mainly from YouTube. The company achieves well over 1 million ARR from YouTube alone. Now, some of you are wondering, how did they do that? Well, the reason why is people come to YouTube to learn. If you compare the amount of information someone's going to get out of a 10, 20, 30-minute YouTube video compared to just a 30 or 60-second TikTok, it's often a lot more. And even though you're getting less views with YouTube, those views often build a lot more trust, which leads to higher conversions. Now, I know some of you are watching this and are like, okay, I get it, but I still believe short form content is still king. And for a lot of people, it is still king. However, I do believe for quite a few B2B SaaS companies, YouTube might actually be your highest ROI marketing channel for organic content. And like I mentioned earlier, the reason why I believe that is people typically go to YouTube to learn, but also with a lot of B2B products, you typically have to build a lot more trust, and that audience has to spend a lot more time with you in order for them to potentially become a user. And then there's another YouTube strategy that I believe is a little bit easier, and that's YouTube content marketing. Basically, YouTube content marketing is putting out tutorials, use cases, and search-based videos that often get traffic from either your paid ads, your website, or your sales team. And what that does is it helps build a lot more trust and takes time off your sales team, which can make your life a lot easier. But also, too, your prospect might also like this because it gets them a lot of answers to information without them having to wait for you to get back to them. Or if they're shy, they can just go out there and find it themselves. And then another type of content I've been seeing do really well is founder-led content. So what founder-led content is basically you post on X or LinkedIn, and you basically make posts that are relatable to your target audience. So things like, I'm building X, or I'm building this community, or whatever, or I did this with so-and-so today and learned a lot about this thing. And what's really nice about founder-led content is what it does is basically it brings in people who relate to you. You build a following of people who relate to you or are interested in what you do. And then they see your posts, and those posts create multiple touch points for them to realize, oh, this person has an app that does this. And when they need that thing, they're going to remember your app because they follow you and they relate to you. Now, I've seen this do really well with software developers and software engineers because a lot of those people are typically on X and on LinkedIn. Typically, the posts that do well is things like, oh, I joined this hacker house, or I joined this company, or I'm working on building this project with so-and-so. So things that are more community-based, I noticed tend to do very well with founder-led content. Now, there is one major problem, though, with founder-led content, and that's in order for it to work, there has to be a lot of your ideal audience on X and LinkedIn. And some industries, that's not the case. Obviously, we know it with software developers and software engineers and SaaS builders, there's a lot of those people on X and LinkedIn. But let's say you're targeting more of the restaurant industry. You're not going to find a lot of restaurant industry owners, from what I know and assume, that are going to be on X and LinkedIn all the time. So my point being is, if you want to try founder-led content, my best recommendation I can give is post consistently, like 3 times a week, and just try it for 3 months and treat it more as an experiment rather than your main source of growth, unless you know that, pretty much 100% that this is going to be where you're going to get users from. And then right now, we're going to get into more of the nitty-gritty stuff, the short-form content. So by now, probably most of you know about short-form content creation if you've been on the internet for these past 5 years. And basically, this strategy works really well with Instagram, TikTok, and I'd say sometimes YouTube Shorts. And that's essentially trying to create viral content that more specifically leads people to come back and watch the rest of your content. So this is typically in your B2C market, but what you want to do is essentially you want to create posts that go viral, and then people see that post and they want to check out your profile so they can view more of your posts and create different touch points. So to give you a good example, there is this company called Kinzo AI, and they're building this like AI that goes out, it basically reads your emails, your text messages, etc., and it summarizes all of it in one place. Now, what they did, and this is kind of genius, is they actually created or tried to create these viral pieces of content. It's kind of a numbers game. Some will go viral, some will stay at like a few thousand views. But the ones that do go viral, the goal of them is to get people to view Kinzo's profile. And when people view Kinzo's profile, they see all this other content, they watch a bit of it, and by then they probably have enough touch points of seeing Kinzo's logo and probably know, and maybe from their videos or from the description, that Kinzo is an AI app, and that's an AI app that can summarize all of your notifications for you all in one place. And Kinzo isn't the only company to do this. Another company that's been doing it too is Recruit You. Essentially, they did these street interviews, and people found them really interesting. They found them insightful. They viewed Recruit You's Instagram page, their profile. They watched more Recruit You content, seeing these motivational interviews, and by then they probably have seen enough touch points of, oh, Recruit You. They basically help college students find jobs. I do think going viral is a science that people can eventually figure out, but it is going to take a lot of experimentation and a lot of reps to actually be successful at it. Now, before I get into some of the other strategies, I want to tell you about another strategy you can use to power your growth, and that is networking. I just created a community where people can go and share their ideas for growing their apps, help each other grow their apps, and just be a comforting place where people can go to figure out this whole entire problem of growing our user bases. I have a link to it down below if you're interested in checking it out, and I hope to see you there and help you guys grow your SaaS apps. But anyways, I'm gonna go move on to another short form strategy, and that's mass short form UGC. This is something you probably heard of a lot these past few months, especially with Cluely blowing up in Turbo AI, and it might even work for you. I'll get more into that in a future video. But essentially what mass short form UGC is it's where a marketing team will hire a few in-house content creators. And these content creators are typically your people who are like the Gen Zers that constantly scroll TikTok for like 8 to 10 hours a day, as well as post content. And essentially their goal is to continuously post content and try to get down to a science content that goes viral and resonates with their target audience. And then once they figure out that formula out, they basically create a UGC program that people like you and I can go to, apply to. They basically train people on how to create these viral pieces of content. It is a numbers game though. A vast majority of the videos, like I'd say maybe 95, 99%, will actually flop and not get a ton of views. But it's like the 1 or the few percent that do, that give you a really high ROI. And the conversion rates on these successful mass short form UGC videos, they're typically a lot lower. However, because you're getting so much reach, let's say a million views, some of that is going to funnel down into users. And there is strategies where you can kind of like improve that, typically just by mentioning the brand's name or even showing like it on your screen. But it is something that is really interesting, seeing blowing up recently. Now, me personally, most of my knowledge like is on the B2B side of things. I'm kind of shy with like all the Gen Z culture stuff. But I will say though, like maybe one of the best ways to learn this is to actually apply to one of these UGC programs. And I'm even thinking about doing it myself just because I'm curious, how do these companies blow up on social media and on TikTok? So that concludes a lot of the top organic strategies, and now I'm gonna move into more of the paid media strategies. So I'm still kind of figuring this out, all these strategies these companies are doing, but I did notice some strategies some of these top companies are doing on like LinkedIn, YouTube, Meta ads. And there's one company, Bordy, that I've noticed been doing these founder-sponsored posts. And I think this is really interesting. I think this could be a really high potential idea because it obviously works. They've been posting a lot of these founder-sponsored posts. But if you view the details on these, typically what these posts are is it's either some funny posts like relating to the company that they're sponsoring, or it's something that's more insightful. Maybe they tried using this app and it basically seems like, oh wow, I tried, Bordy or whatever, and it helped me drive this results, or it helped change this thing about my life. But I do notice a lot of these posts, they typically include some sort of like storytelling and kind of go over the features, and I don't know, people relate to that, and eventually, maybe it works out. Now, one thing I don't know is how successful these founder-led sponsor posts are. However, I can assume if Bordy is still running these for like a month or two from now, let's say December, these posts, these might actually be pretty successful campaigns that you can try with people. You can just pay an influencer to post a piece of content and then use LinkedIn ads to sponsor them and boost it out to more people. And then for this next strategy, I like to call this strategy the create your own world ad strategy. Now, this is particularly useful if you think your organic content just won't get a lot of reach, but you want to run paid ads to still reach people. So how this essentially works is basically you run paid ads. In those paid ads, the goal of them is to lead people to your profile, where they then go and watch your organic content that doesn't necessarily get a ton of views and a ton of reach. So this is very useful for those who maybe have a more specific audience that they know is on Instagram or is on TikTok or is on YouTube Shorts even, but they don't necessarily think they can reach them with organic content. So they create their own like little island that leads people that isn't really, sort of gaining a lot of traction publicly. Now, I haven't seen a SaaS company do this the way I was thinking of, but there is this other tech company called Ride also. And essentially what they did was kind of the strategy I was talking about, where they created these like ads that are really mind-catching. Like it'll be a bike that has an invisible seat or an invisible frame, someone's riding it, and it just grabs people's attention like, what is this? And then they go view the profile, they see it has all this organic content, they watch it, creates multiple touch points, creates interest, and then people remember, oh, if I need an e-bike, Ride also, they're an eBay company. So that is an interesting strategy that I've noticed recently with like Meta ads as a whole, and maybe it can work for your SaaS as well. And then this next strategy, I like to call the full force YouTube ad strategy. So essentially what this really only applies to me, the top 0.1% of companies, unfortunately, that are really well funded, is basically they take a 2-week span and they put $20,000 to $50,000 worth of ad spend to run ads in that 2-week span. And it creates multiple touch points, it creates a lot of awareness for their app. So it might be a really good go-to-market strategy. Now, I know this seems crazy, but I did see a company do this called Base44. So early this year, Base44 was acquired by Wix. And suddenly, Base44 had all this money coming in, and they had all this talent from Wix's advertising department to basically market Base44. And what they did was this exact strategy that I'm telling you about, where they basically ran a bunch of Base44 ads in this short period of time. Now, I don't know how successful this really was, but considering it came from the marketing department, the advertising department of a web builder company that's worth multi-billions, maybe this is something that might be an interesting go-to-market strategy to consider. Now, interesting story here. I have a friend who runs a club and he needed to create apps for our club for different activities. And I noticed he started using Base 44 shortly after Base 44 was running all these ads. And I haven't asked him this yet, but I'm just curious who found out of it from all these ads Base 44 was running. But again, it is an interesting strategy. It's just I consider it one of those really high risk, high reward strategies that can get you general reach. So by now you know all these strategies, but which ones should you actually try out for yourself? Well, it's all going to depend on if you have a B2B primary target audience or a B2C primary target audience. So your B2B audiences, the people who watch business-related content or your business-related consumer, typically is going to be on YouTube, LinkedIn, X, and Facebook. And the reason why is people who want to watch content that could lead to a B2B product, they value connection and they value learning. And these platforms do a really good job at that. They're typically more in depth with content and they typically have easier ways to connect. So why, if you have a B2B primary target audience, why can't you just post the typical TikTok and Instagrams that you see all these other companies doing? Well, what happens is these other platforms, TikTok and Instagram, these short form platforms, they're designed to value short dopamine hits. And what happens is these companies who post content meant for a B2B audience, it gets shown in people's feeds, but because it's boring educational videos designed for a specific type of person who's interested in them, they ultimately end up failing. And they'll typically get maybe 300 or at most around 3,000 views. Now, there is exceptions to this, particularly if apps that have a B2B primary audience, but a B2C secondary audience. So to give you an example, there's this company called Notion. They essentially create an app that's basically like your all-in-one note taker, tasks, you can do a lot of stuff with it. Their main target audience, they want to reach the B2B type of people. But I still use Notion for my classes, but also for business-related stuff. And what they did was they worked with a variety of long-form creators, more of your B2B, and also a lot of short-form creators, more of your B2C. And that helped them get the reputation and be able to work with both audiences. And then you have your platforms that are really good if you have a B2C audience. So these are your TikToks, Instagrams, Facebooks, and Snapchats of the world. And people go to these platforms because they value entertainment and they value relatability. Now, like I mentioned earlier, but in reverse, an app with a B2C primary audience can still get B2B users. To give you an example, Cluely, they did mass short form UGC. They were targeting B2C users, but eventually that trickled down to B2C. They basically create a lot of short form content, but how do they get B2B users? Well, people originally came to Cluely because they wanted to cheat in interviews. They wanted to use it for taking notes and stuff. But they eventually found out via word of mouth and Cluely's advertising that, hey, this can actually also be used for B2B purposes, doing Zoom meetings and taking notes. So what can you take away from this? Well, if you have a B2B primary ICP, ideal customer profile, you want to be on one of these platforms. But if you have a B2C primary customer profile, you want to be on one of these platforms. And then in some cases, if you have a product that can reach either a B2B or a B2C user, probably you could do any of these really. But I would highly recommend, if you can, start out with the B2C customer first and go on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat, etc. And the reason why is those platforms, content can typically go more viral on them, and you can get a lot more reach with a lot less effort than having to post a 10-minute YouTube video or writing a ton of LinkedIn posts and connecting with people. A common belief people have is that you need to post on every single platform and try out every single strategy. And my honest answer is, I don't think that's what you should do. The reason why I say that is there's this marketing guru called Gary Vaynerchuk who has worked with tons of creators and tons of big brands. And basically what he said is every platform has its own culture. You can't post a post on one platform and expect it to go viral on all the others, because people come to those platforms for different reasons, and there's different types of posts and content that are more successful. And unfortunately, a lot of you watching this, you do not have the resources or the team where you can dedicate to be successful on many different platforms. Also too, social media is a long-term game. It takes a lot of experimentation, a lot of trial and error to actually get to a point where you're really successful. So if I were you, what I would do is I'd find the 1 to 2 platforms that drive 80% of the results for 20% of the effort. And from there, you'll try it out, your experiment, fail, but eventually you're gonna figure it out and you're gonna drive a large amount of growth. And speaking of making your life easier, I'd highly recommend checking out these other videos that I have posted on YouTube to help you grow your SaaS. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.